The hall was the heart of the Tudor household, where meals were eaten and guests were entertained. The fireplace in the central hearth provided both heat and cooking facilities, and was also the place where our merchant and his family could relax together after a long working day. In the 16th century, work revolved around the home, and so there was often little difference between work and family life. Women were raised to be humble and obedient housewives, but many also played a very active role in the family business, as our merchant's wife now explains.
I was first introduced to my husband when he was a journeyman, and I a servant in a gentleman's household. When we could afford lodgings of our own, we married, and were soon blessed with the birth of our first and only child. Childbirth was a frightening and dangerous time, and I had been summoned to attend many births before my own, which had ended unhappily. Without a son of our own to continue his trade, my husband took on an apprentice. I vowed to raise this child as I raised my own daughter, and teach him to be diligent in all things and respectful to all men. When he first came here, he was a good and obedient child, running errands and chopping wood whenever I asked. But he soon grew lazy and unruly, as boys do, and if you want my opinion, he was more of a hindrance than a help. When I wasn't chasing around after him, I was seeing to the well-being of the household. Never let it be said that my family weren't fed, clothed, or kept in good health as my mother had instructed me to do. If they fell ill, I mixed remedies with herbs from my own garden. These same herbs, which I hung at the window, stopped diseases from entering the house, and helped to mask the smells coming from the street outside. We ate well when the seasons allowed, and in the lean winter months I made stews or pottage from vegetables and meat that had been dried, smoked, or salted in the summer months to preserve them. You can see some of these foods in bowls on the table. Some days, when business was good, my husband would return from buying cloth with spices or sugar from a ship newly returned to port from a voyage overseas. That evening we would have a very special feast indeed. My husband was often away from home, and because I could both read a little and write quite well, he entrusted me to oversee the business and the work of his apprentice until he returned. Girls were not schooled like their brothers, and so it falls to me to pass these skills to my own daughter, so that, God willing, she will also one day be a useful and dutiful wife and mother.
Mothers and wives in this row continue to play an active role in supporting their families and raising their children to be independent and responsible adults. For one resident, it was this sense of family spirit that made these cottages such a happy place to grow up.
We had very little, but comparing today, we were far happier. Mother was the most wonderful woman in the world. She was in domestic service right from an early age. Mother's hands were never empty. If it wasn't ironing, cooking, sewing, it was rug making. When they worked at such a speed and tempo. They just didn't tire. They just seemed to go on and on. And of course, we boys, we always had to be persuaded or bribed, as most kids do. In those days, Mum or someone used to shop nearly every day. We never had such a thing as a fridge. We had the furnace down in the wash house, which of course was always cold, except when it was in use. And that's where Mother would put the butter or bacon or whatever it is to keep that extra little bit longer. Auntie Bess would come in, Mabel, are you going uptown this morning? Would you get me a small loaf? And that's how we were. Everybody helps everyone else. Oh, didn't Mother say, anything on the garden, Dad? I'll see. And he'd come home with sprouts, beetroot, parsnip, guzgogs, but we never went hungry. And Mother would send me up to Matthews the butcher's, Miss Matthews, for 6 pence the bones. And at the end of the day, you had the most fantastic stew you'd ever had in your life. When my son was born, I would take him down to Mother's for the day. And I mean, he took over that row of houses. He was God as far as they were concerned. And he'd walk into anybody's house, this, that and the other. Well, life was wonderful. It really was.